like to talk a little bit about Arsenal. It's been a very shocking start to the season for Arsenal, only picking up 4 wins so far of potential 14 games. Worst start to a Premier League for the club in its history. How do you assess Mikel Arteta's performance this season and the players so far?
Okay, well, look, being pedantic, it's their worst start since the 74-75 season. Okay, so I've got no statistics in front of me. It's just something I'm just got the screen in front of me and that's it. It's something that I read, I think I read it in the newspaper last week, or it might have been on one of the programs on TV. Anyway, it's the stats come up and it's their worst start since 74-75. That's the year I signed schoolboy for Chelsea. I'm now 61. So it ain't a bad record, have it right. Going back to a little bit selfishly, James, and I hope you bear with me on this. 2 weeks ago, I think it's 2 weeks ago tonight, I was filling in, because normally the three of us are together on this Football Uncensored podcast with like me, Don Shanks and Alan Hudson, and they were away in the Gran Canaria. So we basically did an episode, and a large chunk of it, a massive chunk of it, was dedicated to Arsenal. Because people from the autobiography, etc., they'll know that my dad brought me up as an Arsenal supporter, and it was every home game on the North Bank, etc. Right? So, but then when you become a professional, when you become affiliated to a club, your professional mindset determines the fact that, or dictates the fact that your allegiances change. What I said on that podcast 2 weeks ago seems to have come to fruition, and I maintain exactly the same opinion. I'm of the same mind as what I was back then, and even earlier, a few episodes earlier. I believe truly that the problem is not Arteta. He needs a mentor, and he supposedly has. He's had mentors like Guardiola, etc. I dare say it's people he can ring like Wenger. I happen to believe that Wenger was an ongoing myth, and the media sold him, and they built him up. And there was nothing that Wenger done that hadn't been done 30 years earlier by Malcolm Allison. But that's another issue. Looking at Arteta, what I stated 2 weeks ago, I truly believe that the problems are above Arteta and below Arteta. So above Arteta in, let's say, the boardroom or the executive lounge, where you CEO, director of football, technical director, all these posts that exist or may or may not exist. And you've had people going out the door, new people coming in the door. There's been like a constant, one of these revolving doors where people are going out and coming in. So it's never been quite clear who he's been working with from day one. Some of their purchases, signing off on some of their purchases have been questionable. That leads me to the bit below Arteta, where if I was to talk to him over dinner, I would cover some of the ground with regards to what we've said, which is like you're suffering from an ideology. He's trying to play a certain way. Some would say he's trying to play a way similar to Manchester City, where he built up his coaching CV under Pep Guardiola, and quite frankly, he hasn't got the players to do it, right? So looking at the what I said above and below, people have signed off on signings where, when I look below, there's too many players for me that are not Arsenal Football Club standard in like days of yore. So like, if I was to go through it like I did 2 weeks ago, for me, Tierney, a massive tick. I think he plays with passion, purpose. I think he's got a cracking left foot. I think he's got great ability. He plays with a desire. He plays with energy, and he looks like he would listen. I think there's massive potential. So there's a tick there. Massive potential with Gabriel, someone I would love to work with as an ex-centre back. I think there's massive potential there. I think he's got everything going for him. He looks a beast. He's got pace. He's got power. He's got height. I think he looks a good guy. I look at the goalkeeper. So a massive tick for Gabriel, a massive tick for Tierney. I look at the goalkeeper, a massive tick for the goalkeeper. He looks to be decent. He looks to be capable. He looks to have a magnificent attitude. He looks to be a good guy. And then I'm struggling. Then we moved on to midfield. So I said, right, okay, if you're going to set someone up to screen the centre backs, right? So you could go with like a 4 and a 2, or you could go with a 4 and a 1, or you could go with a 3 and a 1. So you've got like, I'm looking at, I think to myself, they should change formation, but it's just my personal opinion. And I could have the debate with someone as a football man. Like I keep saying, it's the same game. All right, it's played on better surfaces. There's better refueling habits. They've got all these stretching programs, an army of masseurs, etc., 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 etc. When it comes down to it, if I was having a chat with Arteta, you could have the debate on what I think, which is I think they should change the formation, and I'll give you the reasons why. But let's look at the midfield, right? And as a consequence of the midfield, that's why I believe they have to change the formation. So there's 2 reasons. That's the first one, because in midfield there's absolutely no out-and-out leader / enforcer / boss who's dictating and bossing and talking and give us it, pass it short, give us it, lend it in, give us it, get it back. And at the same time, timing his tackles well and covering every blade of grass in like the Kante mould at Chelsea to screen the centre-backs, right? More importantly, right, which leads me to the second point, you'd have to change your formation is there's absolutely nobody that appears to me to be at all creative, right? And it starts with the fundamentals. So I dug him out, John Hartson, the other day, because he said about Willian, and he's like this and he's that, and he said he said something about his age. He says something about you got to question this, you got to question that, and I'm like, whoa, that's lazy. It's easy, and it's like a throwaway remark. I think Willian is like way the back of the queue. In actual fact, in terms of like Arsenal's best player, and particularly Arsenal's best midfield player, I think he's been light years ahead. He's had a couple of dodgy games lately, but the whole side has, right? You can't dig Willian out. You've got players there who have come through the ranks, and you've got players there who have been bought for fucking 70 million. They've been a disgrace. They're not doing the fundamentals with regards to when you haven't got the ball. What you need to do, this is what you need to do, or anyone listening to this needs to do, go to the first game, right, in the week after Arteta took over. So he's gone in, he's introduced himself to the lads, and he's gone, right, let's go to work. And he's got out on the training field. Then you look at that first game at the Emirates, and they're pressing, and they're getting within blocking distance. They're getting people's head down. They're nicking the ball. They're intercepting. They're chasing down like lost causes and nicking the ball back, etc., right? None of them are doing that, right? So then this all revolves around my second point, which is like I said, I'd play them together in my formation, Lacazette and Aubameyang, but at the moment they look distinctly average. So someone said to me, no, you're joking, like Aubameyang's world class. I said, nah. First of all, never in a million years is he world class. Secondly, it doesn't matter even if you are world class, or in this guy's opinion, he's world class. At the end of the day, right, they're both redundant because they're not getting any supply. They're not getting any service. And the reason they're not getting any service is because they're not doing the fundamentals. They're not getting the ball into good areas, right? When they put the ball in, the only one who's putting any decent crosses is Tierney. And as a consequence, that's all as a consequence of not playing the right formation. So I think Arteta's suffering from a little bit of ideology. What he needs to do is he needs to go back to days of yore, or maybe a mixture of the two, which I always said. I said it on social media. I've said it on interviews. For Arsenal Football Club, when people used to go on about, yeah, but this is so much better than under Wenger, right? As far as I'm concerned, fantastic, but a bit of a myth. Because there's got to be an even kill. So I'm the person that's being brought in to bring it an even kill. I'm not being funny. My missus could have managed the side that he managed, and you can see from outer space. You've got an head start with the back five, Seaman, and then whatever your interpretation of the 4 defenders are. So Winterburn, Dixon, Adams, Keown, Bold, Keown, Adams, Bold. So whatever he's got a great head start for that. And then you can see from outer space, Petit, player, Vieira, player, Henry, player, Perez, player, Overmars inherited, etc., etc. So I think it's all a bit of a myth. And like I said, with regards to anything like lifestyles, etc., etc., that was done 30 years before under Malcolm Allison. With regards to bringing younger players through, that was done 30 years before under Malcolm Allison. With regards to going into sports science, etc., any arm that you care to name of professional sport or its science. Malcolm Allison did it 30 years before. But sticking to specifics and fast forward to now, I'm looking at it and I'm thinking to myself, what they're not doing, they're not doing Arsenal, not doing the fundamentals. I always said, the original point, the perfect mix of any manager, so obviously everybody's going to fall short, the perfect mix of manager would have been the combination of George Graham and Arsene Wenger. So, you know, you had the magnificent coaching ability and organisation of George Graham, which I saw firsthand in person, right, a number of times, right back to when he was youth coach at QPR under Terry Venables, learning the defensive strategy they used off of Venables, and then all the way up to latter day, blessed to work for the Press Association, 11 seasons consecutively, going to every Arsenal home game, watching the Invincibles and the team that Wenger put together. So the perfect combination, massive long-winded answer, I think is somehow a mixture of those two people. They've got to get back to the pragmatism of keeping clean sheets, fighting for 50-50s, fighting for second balls, scrapping for lost causes, chasing lost causes, closing down, getting within blocking distance, pinching the ball back, and then switch on. And then what I think is suffering from at the minute is there's too much ambiguity, right? I don't know if this makes sense, James, the way I'm coming across, right? I think what he's tried to do is try to put an imprint, Mr. Arteta, of his own ideology on the football club and on the players. And I'm sorry to say, right, and this is just, that's me, I started at the top and slid down the greasy pole and ended up learning, I'm looking at it from a coach's point of view now, but, you know, it has to be said, I'm happy to hold my hands up. Yeah, I only live in, majority of my living in the lower divisions, right? But it's the same game. Right, but what he's trying to do is trying to put an imprint on players who are not up to it. Not only that, he's inviting pressure. I'll write this thing down with regards to, which I'm putting in my second book. It's the state that Arsenal are in at the moment in terms of what I saw with, when you're struggling, I remember when I was a kid, I was told as a kid by Dario Gradi, he said, like, you're trying to, like, wind the ball in there, over there, down there, through there. He said, and then when a couple of them get cut out, or the ball changes hands, he said, your head goes down, you're digging an hole for yourself. What you've got to do, you've got to go back to simplicity, right? And the thing that hit the nail on the head for me was, I was watching Match of the Day 2 on Sunday night, was the ball come to Luiz, who I think is been like one of life's lucky boys, because someone threw up the trophy winning teams that he's been in, but I've always maintained never a centre back as long as he's got a hole in his arse. But the ball come to him, and then there's a thing that sometimes when you've got time, James, what I'll do, instead of me absorbing the time, what I'll do is I'll give you the time, right? I don't know if that makes sense. So when the ball comes to me, I'll just go boom and I'll punch it straight to you. One touch to control, second touch to pass to you. So I might have the time, but what I'm doing is I'm giving you the time. I'm not absorbing the time. I'm passing the time on to you for you to have the time, right? What Luiz did, he became indecisive. He took a second touch, a third touch, a fourth touch. He ended up running it in. Then by the time he's made his mind up to pass it wide to the left back, it got intercepted and they got it on the break almost, right? Right, now this is the thing. When people become indecisive, right, it leads to argument and discussion. Argument and discussion then lead to interpretation, right? Interpretation can then lead to anarchy, right? And that's what Arsenal have got at the moment.
Will Arteta get two transfer windows to put this team right? Do you feel that to get the players he needs to put his stamp on the club, will he get the time? Do you think he'll get the two windows?
Well, me personally, without a shadow of a doubt, he should do. Otherwise, why bring him in to replace the other geezer, Emery, whatever his name is. Emery might as well have been Dick Emery. You know what I mean? No, without a shadow of a doubt, he's got to be given the chance, because he showed early on. They said, where is it? Someone said they won Oh, one was the Charity Shield. They won the FA Cup and the Charity Shield. They won more in 35 days than they had in the previous X amount of years. So, you know, I understand it's like a little Mickey take, it's a little thing, but it's true. So why have they slid this far back? I think it's as a consequence. What I forgot to say as well, also, let me tell you, there's too many. That's another thing I was part of. I was part of it. I was one of them. I was a victim of it. There's too many players at Arsenal, who youngsters, who have made their debut prematurely. They've made their debut before their time. They've made their debut before they're the finished article. And you're never the finished article. But you understand what I'm driving at. And I think that's another contributing factor. So without a shadow of a doubt, he needs a couple of windows. But, you know, you look at the state of football now, quick fix, immediate gratification. It's a reflection of society. You've got idiots on social media who half of them don't know what they're looking at anyway. But that's no shame, because there's half the people in football don't know what they're looking at. You know, they're calling it reset. Well, you can't do things like that. There's absolutely no point in bringing him in, right? What I'd have done, I'd have brought someone pragmatic in the first place, not an idealist. You understand? And people were saying, people like Eddie Howe, this and that. Don Shanks even said on our podcast, Don Howe for England manager, fucking no chance. Eddie Howe. No chance. Absolutely no chance. He's just relegated Bournemouth last year, right? You know, he's basically non-plus. So he's took them up, took them down, took them up, took them down again. That's not, for me, that's not England material, and he hasn't managed top players. He's had, what I wanted actually was an environment where he owned the environment and he was comfortable within that environment. Not a lot of money to spend, but he knew what he was getting into to begin with. That's when you've got to say, right, this is how I want to do it then. What I said, someone who's used to handling strict funds at a conservative club, I said Diego Simeone. But they went with Arteta. You can't start saying now, now we're going to get rid of him before he's had a chance to buy who he wants to buy and get in the club who he wants to get in. And that, by the way, that includes, off me personally, top to bottom, the coaching staff, because this is all part of the Wenger legacy. You've got a 350 grand a week liability. He knows, everyone knows that he's, I thought it was quite well put, actually. Cundy said on TalkSport, and when you look at it and analyse it, he's right. Ozil, flat track bully. He'll play well against the Norwiches and the Stoke Cities and maybe the Burnleys and maybe the Brightons. But you put him in a scalding hot fucking North London derby against Spurs or Chelsea or Man United, where he's got to fight and scrap and earn the right to play, old school, right? He goes on the missing list, right? So everyone knows. So there's a 350 grand a week liability there. That would have been my first priority. What you do, you get him out of the club, right? Take away. I had it at Orient. It's like a nasty smell in your living room that you can't get rid of. You try everything. Air freshener, plug-in ones, spray ones, fucking infusion ones with a bamboo sticking out the jar. You try it. You name it, I tried it, right? And I had it at Leyton Orient. That's just that low down, right? And it infects the club, right? So my first priority would have been 350 grand liability. He don't want to play how I want to play. He's a well-known flat track bully. The German club, they're no mugs. Real Madrid, they're no mugs. They've timed it just right with regards to they get rid of him just as they're approaching their prime for a maximum amount of money. And initially, when he come in at Arsenal, he did well. He's the type of player, you get 2 good years out of him, then you off him. You get rid of him. I promise you. Trust me. But I've never had the chance. So what you should have done, you should have said, get him to a club that's going to give him 150, then do a deal on the remaining 200 grand a week, and we'll give it to you in a lump sum, a proportion of it, just to get you off the books. That's what I'd have done.
With the predicament Arsenal find themselves in this season, do you think that this was the perfect chance to play a lot of the Howe End youth?
No, I think it needs a massive clear out. I think the club needs a massive clear out from top to bottom. And it was nice for my ego, and it was nice for my pride. Hayland and Wadham Lodge, they're over by me. They're Arsenal academies. They're over by me, right? And then you've got the training ground that's just up the road from me on the M25, London Colney. You're there, boom. Someone said to me on social media the other day, And like I said, it was quite nice for my ego and my pride. There's people who have been coaching over the decades there, and they've got nowhere near my CV or pedigree. So at the end of the day, when you look at it from a coaching point of view, you've got to question what it is they're putting out. And like I said, you know, I mean, listen, I've got no axe to grind. I'm just saying it how I see it. I don't care. I've been out of it for ages. You know what I mean? Last job I had was managing men in non-league. But when it comes to bringing through kids right the way through the ranks from whatever under 10, under 9, you know, you got to question some of their calls anyway. I don't know whether that's myth or legend or not. Harry Kane went through the door. He went through the revolving door. People like that. You've got to question whether there's some of these people know what they're looking at. And I know someone he was a former acquaintance of mine. I was going to give him a job. I was quite close to him. We were quite good friends. He worked for some of the names he threw up. I mean, he worked for Wenger for like over 20 years at every level. He started in the academy, under 17, under 19, under 23, reserves. Some of the names he was throwing up with regards to as well, you're thinking, well, who's he? You know, who are these people? And when I look at the legacy, in inverted commas, when I look at the players that have come through, goes back to what I said 10 minutes ago. There's just too many players that are not up to Arsenal standard. And if they are, they've got to be given time. And they haven't been given time. And what can happen is, the same thing that happened to me. You can end up making your debut too early. And then, like, the shock to the system and the adrenaline gets you through the first 2 games. And then what happens is you hit a brick wall. You get your custard pie. You plateau. All those sayings, you know what I mean? You think, oh, you know what I mean? The daily grind of being a first-team player at Chelsea, already in the relegation zone, it can impact you. Because you're surrounded by people who I was going on the missing list, cheating, not wanting the ball, not training properly, rather be on the treatment table than the training pitch. Didn't give a monkeys about the club, the supporters or the results. And I'm talking household names, senior faces. So you can, the point I'm making is you can actually be thrown into a team at the wrong time. And it can impact the rest of your career. This is where I think some of the young players at Arsenal are at.
Xhaka, for instance, the Arsenal fans have shown a lot of indifference to him, not just for when he sort of thrown the captain's armband down and showed discontent for the team, but his overall performances for the money that Arsenal paid for him haven't been good enough in Arsenal fans' opinion. How do you, as a manager, how do you motivate them players? How do you get the best out of them sort of players?
Well, you don't need motivating, he needs calming down. I mean, like some people are clueless, they don't know what they're looking at in football, and supporters are clueless, they don't know what they're looking at. And then there are those people in football and those supporters that clearly know what they're looking at, and they're very, very intelligent. And as someone said to me the other day, because I try to interact a lot on my Twitter feed, I try to interact with people when they put something to me. They were spot on what they said. Arsenal were just grinding away and just starting to get back into it and just starting to get on top. And he has a rush of blood and he tries to iron someone out, just on the edge of or the last part of Arsenal's middle third, the beginning of their attacking third. And then he has a kick out and a lash out and something else and gets hold of someone round the throat and all that carry on. He don't need motivating, he needs calming down. But this is what I'm talking about. You know, these are the type of people I'm talking about, James, you know. I just don't think they're Arsenal quality. They're not Arsenal standard. And don't matter where they're playing. For me, he's quite clearly not up to it. I've got to question the people. Maybe that's why they've left the club. Or maybe they're politically very clever while they're still at the club. I've got to question the people who sign off on these transfers. You know what I mean? So he's one that falls into a different category. He needs calming down, and the discipline went out the window just as they were starting to get a foothold in the game and get on top, and they go, boom, they're down to 10 men. As a manager, on behalf of Arteta, you cannot legislate for that. You can compensate for it, but you can't legislate for it. It's out of your control, right? But what you can do in training, you can do a rehearsal whereby this is how we set up if we go a man down, which I'm sure managers and coaches do.
14 games gone in the Premier League. Arsenal are sitting 15th.
Try.
I think it's a real possibility that they could be dragged into a relegation dogfight this season? I know there's been a lot of banter going around from sort of rivals of Arsenal and stuff, but do you think it's actual real possibility?
I don't think he was. Me personally, I think no. Right? Maybe he's right. What he said to me, Lord Hudson, he said, you know, the problem with you is you're too low when you look at things through rose-tinted glasses. What I will say is, I can't disagree with what Alan Shearer said on Sunday night. He just said Lineker said, is it a possibility? And he said with those players and with that attitude, it's a distinct possibility. I can't disagree with that. But I just think that in the end, Arsenal will should have too much in their locker as a club. I've always thought sometimes when you're in the opposition and when you've been in, like if you've been in and around the place, because I was quite overawed walking in there as a 12-year-old. Over the years, sometimes it's been well justified, other times it hasn't, but the club's always had like an arrogance about it. Like I say, sometimes it's been totally justified and sometimes it hasn't. This is one of those occasions when I think they've just got to get over themselves. Like I said 2 weeks ago, it's took Paul Merson 15 years, however many hundreds of thousands he gets paid to be a pundit, to fucking work out that they're now just Arsenal and they're not the Arsenal, right? And I said to Joe Mealing on our podcast 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago today, well, how long's it taken him to work that one out? It's about 15 years, and it's taken him to work that one out. And here's me driving a cab. Right? It's been a long time since they've been known as the Arsenal. They're now just Arsenal. But he's just brought it into the public domain. What they've got to do, they've got to get over themselves. Learn very quickly they ain't got a divine right to play a certain way. Learn very quickly they haven't got a divine right to get a result. They've got to basically roll up their sleeves and do the nitty-gritty, tough side of the game that they were, well, not just capable of, they were exemplary. I'll go back to a kid. I'll go back to being a kid. First few Arsenal games I went to, they had a goalkeeper in goal called Jim Furnell, Furnell. And then I was part of the Bob Wilson era. And I was 12, just under 12. I was 11 or 12. I was 12. I was 11 when they won the double in 70-71. So I remember like the McClintocks, the Stories, Peter Simpson, people like this, who would earn the right to play before anything else. And people like George Armstrong. It's like the geezer had 3 lungs. The amount of work he got through just to earn the right to play. And then what they do, they get in good areas and quite simply provided service for the likes of Ray Kennedy, John Radford, Charlie George, George Graham, these type of people. They've got to get over themselves, mate, and start rolling their sleeves up. And what they need to do is grind out maybe a couple of 1-0s, like the old school. And then he can maybe put the imprint of his ideology on it. But at the moment, he ain't got the players.
Now, I know you're a firm belief that Arteta should get time to try and sign his own players, to put his own stamp on the squad. But is the job of Arsenal manager too big for a young coach? Is this job too much to handle for a manager that hasn't had that experience of working at top level?
Well, who had more experience than Wenger? And the truth be told, the last 10 years of his reign were a shambles. Let me tell you. Even on the outside looking in, I've got no spies in the camp. I'm just looking at the anarchy that prevailed on the football field, and some of the purchases he made, some of the buys. Nothing. He had total control. Who had more experience than when he arrived and a good reputation than Emery. So. It's not about necessarily experience. Another way of putting it, I would say, James, would be credibility. As someone who suffered, for not having any time after clearing up a mess and then not being given the time to put my stamp on things, I would always give a manager time. I'd always be benevolent in that respect. I think all managers should get time to show that they're up to it. Until they show that quite clearly they're not. And the bottom line is, it's two things. One is what I just said, credibility. The second thing is, one thing that don't change is the quality of the information that's coming out. So unless you see them working on the training field, speaking of which, that might be alien to some of them who were there under the two previous regimes. Because I'm led to believe there were times when both were borderline shambolic, where players were just, it was down to small-sided games and they did what they want. So what he's bringing in, he's trying to bring in a completely different culture. Let's hope he gets the time to do it.
Now, you've said you'd change formations if you was Arsenal manager. What positions or what players would you look to bring in to strengthen Arsenal in January if you had the budget and means to do so?
Well, I just think it's quite clear to me that the midfield area needs addressing like urgently. Formation-wise, listen, it could flop one or two ways, right? It could either clarify things or it could add more confusion. Me personally, when I look at the assets going forward in terms of service and delivery and supply, then quite clearly Tierney is capable of being a good defender and an added attacking player. So I would play with wing-backs. The problem lies in the fact that they haven't got three quality centre-backs. They've only got one, in my opinion. That's Gabriel. I would perhaps have Holding and Gabriel. At the moment, Holding, I think they need a centre-back. But I would, until they find one, it's like rocking all shit. I mean, everybody's after the same players, aren't they? You know what I mean? They're not available. At the end of the day, you might have to make do with what he's got. I would have Holding as a marker. I would have Gabriel as a marker. If I didn't have Gabriel as a marker, I would have to have Luiz as a marker, and I would have Gabriel as a sweeper because his pace will get him around the pitch in terms of covering the other two, who I would be bossing them to go tight and keep everybody's back to the game, knowing that you've got the pace, the height, the power of Gabriel to cover the ground if they make a mistake or the ball goes over their head. If they miss the first ball, if he needs to get across and clear a header or get a one-touch clearance in. Then you look at the right back, I suppose Maitland-Niles, his attributes, especially looking at him for England, he's in the same vein as Tierney. He's not as good a defender as Tierney's capable of being. I think his assets going forward. So push them high and wide and get a supply of crosses coming into two redundant centre forwards at the moment, Lacazette and Aubameyang. The geezer on Twitter might be right. Aubameyang might be world class, but we ain't going to see it if he's not getting any service. And what I don't like at the moment is they're not. I'm looking at players in the lower divisions who they could do a lot worse because they're capable of creating something out of nothing for themselves, which to me Lacazette and Aubameyang don't look capable of doing. Then it's a toss-up who you want in the middle of the park. Willian, Pepe, Xhaka you've mentioned, etc. Well, at the moment, the only one who showed he's up to the job, but that's in a good side playing well, that's Willian. Let me tell you something. I'm not being biased. I'm not saying it because he's a friend of mine. I'm not saying because I got on with him like house on fire when he came on loan to Leyton Orient and he was the catalyst for getting us promoted in 88, 89 when I captained the side of promotion. But Arsenal could do a lot worse than go for someone like the son of Kevin Campbell, Tyrese Campbell. Because this boy, he runs, this young man, I should say, because that's disparaging to me. Gives me the hump when people say son and all that. Anyway, this young man, he actually runs like his dad a little bit. But he's got pace, he's got power, he's got trickery, and he's willing to do the hard part of the game, which is maybe closing down and trying to pinch the ball back in the attacking third, which Arsenal are lacking at the moment. So one of the sons of Arsenal, one of the products of Arsenal's youth academy, his son could actually, I believe, could do a job in Arsenal's first team at the moment. That's just my belief. And I'll tell you who made me aware of him, Don Shanks. I wasn't even looking at it. I didn't even know I was looking at it. I'm thinking to myself, and it didn't register that it was Kevin Campbell's son. But the point being, all these areas need to be addressed. So I would go with 3 centre-backs, 2 wing-backs, retreating into a 5 when we lose the ball. I would have one screen in the 3 centre-backs, which creates a back diamond. And then I would maybe play 5 diamond 1. So, you're basically looking to rotate, like I would with England, rotate Lacazette and Aubameyang and then you just need a player either side of whoever's screening the back four. So you've got like if you're going to talk about ideology, that's my one. That would be a formation. If I could buy players and pick players to put into a formation, that would be my favourite formation, because in terms of rotations and movement, etc., going forward, in terms of wing backs, in terms of wing backs rotating with the outside of the diamond midfield players to get a supply of crosses in, and combination play around the box. I think that formation takes some beating. Then when you retreat into like a double diamond that's reinforced, and you've got full-backs that retreat to shut off the line and push people into bodies that you've got in the middle of the park. But that's just like my little ideology. That's my little fantasy, if you like, with regards to being able to buy players and put them in positions that in a formation that's preferable to me, that I like. And it's brilliant going forward, and it's hard to break down when you're defending.
One thing that's quite puzzling to me with Arsenal is the purchase of William Saliba. Such a big talent, such a big outlay for him, and then to wait for the season to end in France for us to get him from St Etienne. He hasn't played once. He hasn't played at all in any games for Arsenal. What do you make of that?
I'll tell you what I make of it. I'm gonna keep this answer brief. I would question whether Arteta had the final say on that signing. All right. And when I say keep it brief, that's basically it in a nutshell, because he might see things in training and he sees things in the Premier League where he thinks quite clearly that the guy is not ready yet, or he's not capable. And you could argue the point after his initial, he burst onto the scene, Pepe, you could argue the same with him. I think he was saying like 70 million. So I think there's been a few signings at Arsenal where the manager hasn't had the last say, and he might come into that category.
Prediction for Arsenal this season? Where do you see Arsenal, or the Arsenal? Where do you see them?
No, they're not. No, they're not the Arsenal anymore by a long chalk. They stopped being the Arsenal when about halfway through Wenger's reign, or at least the last 10 years of it, last 8, 9, 10 years of it. I think they'll be all right. They're probably top 10. Probably top 10. Probably if they get things going. 10, 9, 8, something like that. 10, 9, 8. One of those. But I don't think they go down.
Is that realistic for Arsenal fans? Do Arsenal fans have to accept the fact that they're...
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. It's realistic. Yeah. Yeah, it's totally realistic. Other people have been given time and they've maybe got a bit more experience and they've got a better collective in terms of players. I'd even say the same at West Ham. I've said for about 3-4 years now, certain areas that West Ham have to address, but above all, they're at their best when they play at a very high tempo, high energy, and they get right in your face and they try and nick the ball back, and they're hard to beat initially, right? Before they think about anything else, right? Well, that's exactly what he's gone in and done, Moyes and his staff. They play with energy, they play with tempo, and they try and get in your face. There's one. Ancelotti, he's come in and done a blinding job. His rules for management is, so that tells me that most of the players are already there. We know that he's got James Rodriguez in, fantastic, top quality, top draw, great player. We saw what he could do. I think it was a couple of championships ago, or what was it? The thing was it the Moscow? Was it the Russia World Cup? Anyway, superb boy. But his doctrine for management, Ancelotti, by his own admission, is not to disturb things too much. So that tells me that things were already in place behind the scenes with regards to the guy who had the one who, what's his name, Barton, had a pop at behind the scenes as a coach, Duncan Ferguson behind the scenes as a coach. The atmosphere, the camaraderie, the togetherness, the information was already there. And what he's done, he's come in as an high-profile manager. And like he says, he doesn't disturb it too much, but he's bought his thing. So so far you've got Moyes, you've got Ancelotti, you've got Rodgers at Leicester, supposedly a renowned coach from his Chelsea days where he learned his trade in the reserves or in the lower age groups. Great collection of players, former Premier League champions. Not a lot's changed there. Probably one of the best midfield players in the country in Maddison. Certainly one of the best centre forwards in Europe since he came into the pro game, Vardy. They've got like a core strength. They've got the kid who came from France playing centre back. What a revelation he's been. So they've got a core strength running right through the spine of the team. Man United we've discussed. Chelsea, Manchester City, the obvious one. Liverpool, the obvious one. So that's 8 clubs I think I've named now, maybe 7. So like I said, you've got Arsenal maybe probably looking to be, they're going to be around about 9th or 10th.